Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is the day we are finally going to we're finally going to discuss my stats. The completed video of 2023's stats of everything that I read. Holy cow. I'm gonna try to make this like a bit of a faster video. I know I've been posting long videos lately just because end of year content, that's just how it be sometimes, and it's cool, but I will try to make this a little bit snappy, a little bit choppy. Choppy? Anywho, let's get in to my stats of 2023. So, I guess we'll just kick it off with the fact that I read 240 books. That's like a lot. That's like, that's like so much. Definitely more than I was intending to read. My goal was 150. You could say I surpassed that. I am pretty proud of myself. I never thought that I would be somebody who could read more than 150 books in a year, and I nearly like got to 250, which is like so much. So let's break that down. How did I read the 240 books in 2023? So hopefully there's enough room for my graph here. But as you can see, I read most of my books in the summer, which is funny because I would say the summer is where I was like the best this year. Mentally, I was starting to like dip and starting to slump, but like came through. So you can see April, May, and August are like my biggest months because readathons were happening. Aurelian Readathon was happening, Amazing Readathon was happening, Escape the Readathon was happening. I was like actively participating in those. 30 books in July. I think I just did that for funsies. Not sure. Don't remember what was happening there. But yeah, it's like cool to see the breakdown. This does not include any DNFs. I think I only DNF'd 2 or 3 books this year, and I don't track it on here just because I like this to be completed stats. But if we go over to pages read, I read in total 29,979 pages, which compared to last year was pretty good. I'll probably do like comparison reading over the years at some point. I don't know when, but I do have like an ultimate reading tracker with like every book I've ever read and all the stats. It's a lot. But as you can see, August, I freaking crushed it. I think August I did a lot of tandem physical reading, but yeah, over the summer, just pretty good. In December, there at the end, getting it, getting those pages read. And then as for hours listened, I listened to 882 hours and 15 minutes in total. Whew. Pretty like average. Like you can see again, like the summer, it really went up, where I was averaging around like 115, and then kind of dips a little bit for my slower months where I kind of just like relaxed and didn't read it quite as much. And then, you know, December kind of came back up. So I think it's kind of interesting to see like which months I tend to read more. Like we're already halfway almost through January and I've barely touched books. So like the winter months just don't seem to be super big reading months for me. So that's interesting. Okay. And then when it comes to the reading method, this year I was trying to challenge myself to read more of my physical books, to read more just with my eyeballs. So we're at almost 60% audiobooks. My ebooks were at 7%. Only 9% physical, which is not great. That means that I only just read it with my eyeballs. I'm trying to get better about that. And then mixed media is chilling at 24%. Mixed media is my favorite. That's tandem reading, so I listen to audiobook whilst I'm reading the ebook or the physical book at the same time. And that's just what works best for me. It helps speed up my reading and helps me stay engaged and focus. A lot of the times when I'm physically reading or just listening to the audiobook, my mind will sort of drift around and I'll see myself in areas I shouldn't be. And then as for reading books as rereads, I had 10 rereads this year, which, you know, that's not bad. I'm typically not a rereader, but this year I was finishing some series, so I wanted to reread books. I've also, like, you can tell, like, when I was reading a lot more, in the summer especially, I was also not enjoying as many books, so this kind of showed me that just because I'm reading more doesn't mean that I'm enjoying reading, but that competitive spirit to readathons kind of makes me continue. But with that said, there's a lot of books that I'm hoping to read in 2024 or later that I read over summer and didn't get like the full experience. So that's interesting to note. And then we've got series versus standalones. Oh my goodness. We will have a totally different video, I think, next week, where we talk about all of the series that I started and continued and DNF'd and so on. But we're chilling almost like pretty close to the 50-50 mark for my series and standalones. I prefer standalones. I'm a standalone girly. But, you know, sometimes it happens. Sometimes you end up starting 62 series. And these aren't completely the truest of stats, but based off the spreadsheet, this is pretty close. So I read 33 sequels or so on in this series. I only finished apparently 16, which isn't great. And then a series that I will not continue any further, 15. I DNF'd a lot of series this year. I just was being very honest with myself. I'm like, if I don't love it, I'm not going to continue, and I need to just be like, that's okay. And then one thing that I started tracking this year was my buddy reads. I had 12 buddy reads. That's pretty cool. I'm pretty pleased. I definitely want to focus in the year 2024. And again, we'll go over my goals next week probably as well, but just so you get like a little taste of them. I definitely want to focus on like readathons and buddy reads and book clubs in the year 2024, just to really like get back in touch with the community. These last few months, basically, my mental health started to go down and my reading was going down, and I kind of stopped participating in so many readathons and just like haven't been as active in the community, which, you know, it happens. Everyone needs breaks. Even if you love something, take a break from it sometimes. And so that kind of happened with me, where I wasn't participating in as many readathons. So I'm excited to get back into it, but I'm not going to go as hard mode for everything. My most read for readathon was Aurelium. I read 118 of my books were read for readathons. That's so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. Horror-a-thon is also one that I participate in quite often. This is hosted by Ashley's Little Library. It's a bi-monthly. My birthday is coming up, in case you were curious. If you want to give me an early birthday present, feel free to subscribe. But my birthday is February 9th. And Ashley is hosting the first horror-a-thon of 2024. We're reading The Hare, or The Har, which is like, from my understanding, it's on Kindle Unlimited. I think it's like body horror romance, question mark? But her and Books and Lexi will be live on my birthday to read that. So I'm excited. I think that's, I guess, going to be my birthday plans. I'm not sure. I also have on here Pokemon, which was started in December. I'm a co-host, so, you know, there's a lot to read for that. There were life prompts, there was reading prompts, there was one or two special Pokemons. Yeah, there's so much going on. And then I also largely participated in Realmathon. I'm surprised that Escape the Readathon isn't bigger. Oh, Escape the Readathon was the 11. My bad, not Horror-a-thon. Horror-a-thon I participated with 3 bucks. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, Escape the Readathon was 11. And then let me find the Amazing Readathon. Apparently only 4. Which, it's hard when I'm participating in like 3 different readathons, like which one I'm going to classify as that readathon on my tracker. And then as for book clubs, I read 26 book clubs. Obviously, most participated in was the Literally Dead book club. I did my series where I was catching up on them, and then I just like to participate. And then in second, I have Lights Out, hosted by Riveting Reads. I really enjoy this. It's another like horror thriller book club hosted by Sav, and so I've been enjoying that. And then in third place is Daphne's Being book club, where we read the Jade City Greenbone Saga. That's what it's called. Okay, continuing, we've got genres. I love this stat. I took inspiration from Daphne this year and started tracking my subgenres, and I read across 15 different genres, my most read being fantasy, of course, at almost 40%. And then in second place, horror. That was one of my goals for the year. I nailed it. I wanted to read more fantasy and fantasy horror and just horror in general, and I nailed it. And then, funny enough, in third spot for most read genre would be romantasy. And then when you come into my subgenres, it's like primarily romance, and then retellings, horror, mystery. You know, the typical. Whilst we are here, I will show you my Tetris. This is something that I started this year. A lot of people do like pixel in a year or genre Tetris or Tetris of some bookish way in their reading journals, and I'm not very consistent with like everyday reading journal stuff, so I use my digital tracker as that for me instead. So this year I did genre Tetris, so I picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes for 5 colors and genres, and then I just like slapped it in here. I just stuck it in, and that's the whole thing. I think it's pretty cool. I like to look at it just to see, like, as you can tell, it's a lot of fantasy, it's a lot of horror. I just think it's cool to look at. This is something that I'm going to continue in 2024, but I've broken it into more color palettes to split up the genres a little bit further. I don't really care about publishers, but I will mention that I read 22 self-published books, which I think is pretty cool. And then I read only 10 translated books this year. I think this went down from the previous year. It wasn't as big of a main focus for me, but I definitely want to continue reading translated works because I do enjoy them. One of them was originally written in Spanish and the other 9 were in Japanese, and I think 5 of those Japanese were a manga. So, not great, not my best. And then when we come over to book format, this one's really exciting. Novel skyrocketed just because I was reading a lot more like bigger books, I say in quotes. But 80% of my reading was novels, and then I read a few mangas and graphic novels, not nearly as many as I did the year before. So maybe in 2024 I might pick a few more up. And then we've got book length. My comfort spot is like 200 to 400. That's like my good range. Anything higher than 450 is like pushing it. It's not as enjoyable because it's just like too big. And then, you know, short books are always just fun, but harder to quite connect with. This year, how I acquired said book is looking a lot more colorful. So we've got 30% owned, 7% book box, so that's like pretty good stats. And then I've got my library, Libby, Hoopla, pretty like, takes up another like good chunk, 16 to 23. And then Scribd went way down. It's now Everand, sorry, but it went way down. I kind of just like found myself reaching for Libby way more for books. Like, it was just easy access. Everand is great, but I hate their app so much. Like, I don't know why they don't hire somebody to fix the bugs. It just does not run very well. Like, searching for things is, oh, it is such a struggle sometimes. Loading stuff, finding things. It's just like not the best app, but it is very convenient and useful. Okay, star rating. Per my Goodreads, I ended the year with a 3.7. Per my cawpile, 3.5. That's not super great. I have 2 different graphs, one that is just star ratings and then one that is for half ratings. I prefer half ratings. It just makes it a little bit easier because I find a lot of things being like right in between, right on the cusp. But for Goodreads purposes, whole star ratings, obviously. So we're gonna just focus on my half stars. I had 34 5 stars out of 240 books. What would that math be? That's 9% of my reads. Is that correct? I don't know if that's fully correct, but like 9 to 10% of my reading was a 5-star. Not superb. And then we've got 16 4.5s. I had a lot of like almost favorites, almost perfect books, but just like something just didn't quite hit. 59 4 stars, pretty good. A lot of 3.5s. I got 63.5s. 3.5 is like my typical rating. It's just like, I liked the book. I didn't feel super strongly either way. It wasn't quite like mediocre enough to be a 3 though, you know? That's kind of how I feel. Out of this, I only had one star. Pretty cool, pretty good. 15 2.5s, you know, like it just happens. 3 0 stars, meaning that I just didn't feel comfortable rating them, or for whatever reason. Often like nonfiction, or if like I take too long to read a book, sometimes I don't feel like I gave it the right attention and don't want to rate it. Moving on, age category is always interesting because it's not something that I like tried to pick up. I'm still like right in like that perfect category of like, I do enjoy adult, can still enjoy young adult. Picked up way less middle grade this year, which I'm okay with. I don't really care for middle grade that much, but new adult, it's the new thing. It's the new age category. I'm cool with new adult if the publishers properly categorize things and it takes off. It's very hard to be like, this is new adult, because it's not a common baseline in publishing. So I'm tracking it. I'm on the fence about it. As for publication years, primarily read books released in 2023, which, you know, pretty good. And then again, right after that, 2022 releases. This is something that I feel like will continue happening over the years, but in 2024, I would like to focus on some of my shelves and things that I want to read, as well as just like backlist books that I've been interested in and have been putting off. And then we get into the representation of my books. So, queer rep, this does not mean the author, it just means in the book what the characters identify themselves as. So we've got 52% absent, but 30% where the main character is queer, and 17 where it is present in the book, typically like a side character, a sibling, a friend. You get it. When I break it down, the way that I break down my queer representation is if it's like very well stated by the author or the characters in the book, I will specify if it is a sapphic relationship, if they're gay, they're trans, whatever it is. Like if they're bisexual, I'll specify. Often though, books are marked as queer and you can pick up on the character being like maybe they're pan or bisexual, but never explicitly stating, and so I just mark it down as queer because I don't want to misrepresent any books that I read, so I just say queer as like a nutshell. And then for disability, this is always one that I struggle with. I personally consider chronic illness, mental illnesses as a disability as well, like severe depression, anxiety, so on and so forth, so that it does take up most of my books because that's something that I can relate to and find comfort in reading books, and so obviously I want to track that for myself. So almost 84% absent, which makes sense. It's kind of hard to find disability books that I'm interested in, primarily like the fantasy horror genre. It's definitely out there, I just need to find it a little bit more. I do have a like spreadsheet where I just track like every book that pops up that I think sounds good. Like Instagram is really good for that. They'll be like, here's a carousel of books with representation in some degree, and then I can kind of cherry pick like what sounds good, and I put it in a master spreadsheet for myself. Anyway, so about 13% of the main characters had a disability, and about 3% had disability but like weren't a main character. Again, mostly is going to be mental illness because that's what I can relate to and what I find useful in reading for myself. But also things like PTSD was common, cancer was common, like severe, sad cancer that makes your heart sad. Okay, and then we get into the author information. So when it comes to my POC, I try to be in the 25 to 50% range. I don't necessarily like go out of my way to read any type of way. I genuinely just like pick up books that sound interesting, and then I learn about the author later, unless it's like a very popular author. But this year, 2024, on Storygraph, there is the Diverse Reading Challenge, I want to say. I will leave a link in the description for you to check it out if you're interested in. But it's 3 books per month for different categories, and then like there's a lot of book recommendations on Storygraph that you can pick out what sounds interesting. I'm gonna try to do this. I might not succeed every month, but I will take a stab at it, and then whatever else I typically just like read and pick up. So looking at this, 35% yes, 63% no, and then like less than 1% was like unknown to multiple authors. Like if it's an anthology or if it's a collab piece, obviously they're not going to always be the same race, and so I just mark it down as multiple authors. The breakdown of this is almost 45% were Asian. I read a lot of like Japanese authors. I just like it. And then 30% Black authors, 15% Latin authors, and then some Arab and Indigenous authors sprinkled in as well. And then when we get to gender, oh, one of my favorite stats to track for personal gain, 78% of my books were written by women, and almost 5% were written by non-binary pals. And then a little bit of that chunk would be like multiple authors again. I only read 36 books written by a man. It just keeps getting better and better every year. It's always like a good feeling. So I'm always like pleased to be like, yes, I'm not reading as many men. This is great. Typically when I pick up men, it's like fantasy and horror, because those are like the categories that they are typically dominating. So it's gonna happen. I have no prejudice against men necessarily, but also like sometimes I don't want to hear about women's breasts in my books, you know? And then we're coming to the end, so we've got nationality. I like to track like where the author is from. I like to see, basically, I like tracking nationality because I like to see like where from the world I'm reading. So 53% like American centric is pretty good, although it doesn't account for like Canadian American, Chinese American, because I like to keep that identity in there as well. And then obviously gonna be the next most read is English. Lots of white authors often just dominate the field. That's publishing for you. And then my next biggest would be Japanese authors. Again, I love Japanese fiction. And then Canadian authors after that. So this is just fun for me. I like to see like where in the world. I really want to get one of those like scratch off posters of the world and like maybe hang it up in my closet or something, and then start tracking like where in the world I'm actually reading from. I think that'd be cool. And then I'm not gonna this graph is like overwhelming, but this is all of the authors that I read. I read from 189 different authors. My most read authors were Rachel Smith, the author of the Lore Olympus graphic novels, Nikki St. Crow, who wrote the Never King series, Kimberly Lemming, who wrote the Mead Mishap series, and then Natsuki Takaya, who wrote the Fruits Basket graphic novels that I've been making my way through. And then sitting at 3 is Fonda Lee. So yeah, it's very interesting to see this. This graph is like so overwhelming because there's so many people just crammed in there. And then the last stat, I'm not going to show you guys the money, but I do track saving money, spending money for books that I've read. So like if it's a library book, I track that and see how much I saved. I will just be transparent. I spent more than I had saved this year. Whoops, that won't continue in 2024. But I read across 39, I read 65% of my authors were new to me, and 35%, or general 35%, I had read from before, authors that I have read in the past. And I read in total 39 debut books, which I'm so happy that I'm tracking this year. This is always like a question in tags being like, what was the best debut? And I'm always like, I don't know, I didn't keep track of that. So this year I kept track and I feel pretty good about that. I do track the days that I read in here as well. A lot of people, again, do this in their reading journal, and it's just not something that I'm not gonna do it. If we're just being like super honest, if you ask me to track my habit every day in a journal, it won't happen. On the computer though, that's possible. So in total, approximately, because like some days I might have forgotten or like overestimated, I'm not perfect, but I read about 270 days. That's so cool. I think that's so cool. So that means that I picked up an audiobook or a physical book, ebook, whatever, 270 days out of 365 days that I experienced in 2023. Yeah, so in conclusion, like this is an essay, I had a pretty decent reading year. I did a lot in the community, which was a lot of fun. I read way more books than I thought I would. And overall, I enjoyed a lot of the books. There was, of course, always going to be some duds that just don't work as well for you. But overall, I had a good reading year. I found some favorites. I found some favorite authors. I found a lot of new creators that I could follow and participate in like their readathons and their book clubs, which I think is just so cool. Again, I know that I say this like all of January, but I love this community. I love being a part of it. I love seeing the different creative aspects people have with it. It's just so cool. And yeah, this is how I keep track of my cawpile. My theming for 2024, I went with G's light version and like changed it just a little bit. So it's quite dusty pink, which I think is fun. This year, I'm tracking the typical things. I want to see the different stuff that I track in cawpile that's not originally on there is whether or not it's a debut. If it's a buddy read, I like to track. And then I track if I reviewed it, that's very specific to me, but like if I talked about it on my channel or not. I track if it is for my Biblius TBR, which will be back in February, don't you worry. And then I also track if I bought the book, if I bought that book this year. That way I can see if what I'm picking up is like things that I've actually purchased or if I'm just reading stuff from elsewhere, but like seeing how much is coming in versus how much is being read. I also track the price, and when I say track the price, I track the Amazon price for whatever is out at the time, whatever based on the book. If I would buy the paperback or the hardcover, I pick that option. And then the way that I have it set up is that it counts the price based off how I acquired the book. So if it's a Libby book, that price will go towards how much I'm saving. But if it's an owned book or a book box, that's how much goes into the spent column. And that's how I keep track of savings and spending for what I read. And then I know the actual amount that I spent based on my new books in. I also am tracking this year if a book has been recommended to me by somebody specifically. I will type their name in, see like who is often recommending me books and what I'm reading. I'm also this year going to start tracking vibes, tropes, and emotions because often at the end of the year they're like, okay, how did this book, what book made you laugh? What book made you cry? And I always am like, oh, I don't remember. I remember the story, I don't remember my emotions to the story, which I feel is often flip-floppy. But I want to start tracking tropes if it's enemies to lovers, if it's dark academia, just like having that knowledge as well as like vibes, like is it gothic, is it spooky, like just getting to know a little bit better so that I can see what I'm gravitating towards, how I can recommend books in the future, and also just I love to track stuff. So there we have it. Everything that I have going on. Again, I've got Tetris, which I can show you quickly. This is what my Tetris key is going to be for this year. I'm very excited. I've got one book written down for the year so far. And then my days read this year looks a little bit different as well. It's kind of just like a more broad but nicer looking calendar that does all the math for me, which is just convenient. We love Google Sheets because it just makes math easy. New books I've got as well. I'm not going to show you, but I have title, author, the format, if it's a hardback, ebook, audiobook, etc. Which month I acquired it, where I got it from, how much it cost, if I've read the book, if it's a special edition, if it's a pre-order, and if I've hauled it in a video or vlog. And then I have the mathematics side of things. So it's how many books have I received, how many of those have I read, how many of those are special editions, pre-orders, what's the total cost, and then I have graphs to show me how much I bought in the month. I have a graph to show me like where I'm purchasing from the most. Currently, my book subscription boxes are the most, and then I also have a percent read, just so I can see the percentage because that makes me feel good. If I look at last year's, I read, oh, it's not good, I can tell you that right now. I read 30.8% of the books that I purchased. Of the many that I got, I read 30% of them, which, you know, like isn't bad. That's like almost 50% of what I got, which, like, you know, that's not terrible. I I will find any way to justify my actions. I'm sorry. But that is my breakdown of my cawpile, my stats for the year, how I'm tracking, what I'm tracking. If I add more things or take anything away, like, I will let you guys know next year, but also like maybe in an update mid-year or in a vlog. If I'm like really excited about it, I'll let you guys know if there's things that I add. I genuinely just like love the statistics. I'm such a nerd, like I will just sit every so often and just like look at my stats and be like, ooh, look at me go, this is so cool. It kind of gamifies reading in a way for me, where I'm just like, ooh, can I make it to this next goal? Can I obtain these things? Like, can I do this, that, the other thing? It just makes it a lot of fun for me. I don't know. I'm a nerd. What can I say? I'm on YouTube. What do we expect? This is normal. But that is going to be everything for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope I didn't speed through it too fast, but it's also like, I don't know how to slow down stats. Like, it's just numbers. I just tell you things. If I do like a total like analysis, it's just gonna be too long. So let me know if this worked out for you. Let me know if there's any like additional things that I should track, or if you want to see how I do any of this, like the math side of stuff. Let me know. I can assist. I can show you how my brain works. I have my setup for my reading journal yet, but I like to take other people's ideas and then put it into a virtual tracker because that makes my life easier. So, anywho, that's it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. I know stats videos are definitely more for the creator than they are for the viewer, but I hope you enjoyed them nonetheless, and I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye!